Hello, cooking enthusiasts. We are back to my usual format of just a very complicated, high effort recipe. Again, not so much a project that I expect people to do, but just documenting my process, and hopefully it's interesting or useful information if anybody does get into this type of project. Many years ago now, one of the first big pieces of special equipment I got was a chocolate conch slash melanger, which can be generalized as just a granite wet grinder. Using this machine to make a homemade chocolate hazelnut Nutella style spread was actually, I believe, one of the first cooking videos I ever did. The final product of that experiment turned out okay, but there were a lot of comical errors that occurred and made the process challenging. The other downside is that it made way too much of the hazelnut spread. Now, all these years later, revisiting a hazelnut spread, I'm changing several things, such as making it much simpler, and I have since gotten a smaller work bowl for the machine, which means I can do smaller experimental batches easily. And now the footage you have been seeing is pretty much just getting the hazelnuts roasted to a good degree. I went a little nerdy, and the first batch was roasted at 145 Celsius, since I do have the control with my particular oven. I would say generally when you are roasting nuts, you go for 150 Celsius or 300 Fahrenheit, but I like going just that little bit lower because I feel like it gives you a little more wiggle room for getting that perfect roast. After the roasting, that first batch was ground up a little bit with the food processor before going into the conch. There is quite a bit of footage with this project that I had to edit down, so what I'm saying isn't necessarily going to sync up with the footage. Something we didn't really get on camera well is that the first batch of hazelnuts wasn't quite ground enough to go into the conch, so we had to blitz them a little more in the food processor. But once that gets going, it's just about starting with a moderate amount of the material and then adding it slowly over time. Now, the first batch of roasted hazelnuts was just over half of what we had on hand. The second batch was roasted at a slightly higher temperature, 155 Celsius, for a little longer, just over 25 minutes instead of 20 minutes for the first batch. And I really like of doing those two different roasting levels. I find it creates a bit of a more full spectrum flavor, where the base is more of that lightly toasted, milky tasting hazelnut, but then there is also a decent amount of the darker, bittersweet, roasty, toasty aspect. The last unique aspect is that for both batches of hazelnuts, I did not remove any of the hazelnut skins. I understand why, for texture or presentation reasons, it can be useful sometimes, but I actually think the hazelnut skin is a major source of beneficial flavor. They have that tannic, bitter, astringent quality, but I find that is necessary to balance in dessert applications. So many people that tried this thought there was also chocolate in the mixture, even though it was just a pure hazelnut product. Really, though, those parameters of roasting the hazelnuts was the only thing I got really nerdy about. The rest of the process is really quite simple. It's just the hazelnuts grinding up, adding a little bit of sugar, in this case 10% as a baker's percentage, and I did use lightly toasted sugar, but you couldn't really tell, and a little bit of salt. We did have to pause it occasionally and rejig it a little bit to make sure both granite rollers were going, but otherwise it was just about letting it run for 24 hours. Now I know that people with really nice food processors can make peanut butter on their own, and you could potentially make a hazelnut butter as well, but you really aren't going to get that super refined texture without a machine like this. Especially because I did include the hazelnut skins. You need something that is going to completely break down that texture. And the same thing is true for the sugar I added in. Really, this was a slam dunk. Another thing we didn't film was actually cracking 6 pounds of these local fresh hazelnuts, but in the future we'll probably use regular grocery store stuff. But it's one of the projects my family and friends have raved about the most, and we're already talking about making another bigger batch. So I hope you have enjoyed this video. If you have any questions about this project, please let me know in the comments. I think this type of machine is really fun to work with, and you can even get much smaller ones than I have. And next week's video should be a few recipes utilizing this hazelnut spread. Thank you for watching.